Hey friends, I'm back for the next part of our review of My Time to Stand. We are on chapter 2 now. This chapter is called Cajun, referring to the Acadians, the French-speaking people who migrated to South Louisiana from Nova Scotia in the 18th century and their descendants. My mama, Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard, was all about her culture. She was 100% born and bred French Cajun from a place called Golden Meadow in the great state of Louisiana. And Gypsy's not wrong there. Dee Dee loved being Cajun. She never forgot her roots. That's why she had the fleur-de-lis on the pink house and all that stuff. Okay, back to the book. Golden Meadow is the southernmost incorporated area of Lafourche Parish, and you can list its local residents on the front and back of a sheet of loose-leaf paper. Mama loved Cajun cooking, which requires the holy trinity of ingredients: onions, bell peppers, and celery. Breaking in to say, I'm sure somebody gave Gypsy that information, that Googled it, because we saw the only recipe that she ever wrote in an email, and it was crazy, friends. It was something like, if I remember right, frozen corn and ragu sauce. Okay, back to the book. Her birth name was Petrie, which means clown in French. Some people confuse it and pronounce it Petri, as in the Petri dish on which penicillin was first discovered. Am I pronouncing Petri dish wrong, or is she, friends? I know I got a Ozark accent. I don't always pronounce things right. Maybe it's me. Anyway, back to the book. Gypsy says, you don't need to listen too hard to notice a distinct dialect among those of Cajun descent who live in southern Louisiana. Oh, no shit, Sherlock. The Cajun accent and dialect is one of the most distinct in America. Okay, back to the book, friends. Sorry, I keep having to pop in with my snark. My mother didn't pronounce the TH sound, so when she said, give me that, it sounded like, give me dat. In fact, she H-dropped a lot. Shave off hair was shave off air. No matter how her words sounded, make no mistake, Claudine Blanchard always knew exactly what she was saying. I think when you love to tell stories, like she did, you learn to choose your words and their delivery with precision, the better to ensnare the listener. Friends, did Gypsy just accidentally describe herself there? Okay, back to the book. My mother's first big lie that I know of was when she met my dad, Rod Blanchard, in 1990. Dad was 17 years old and already working as a trawler whenever he met my mom at the local bowling alley. I imagined my dad back in the day as a totally chill kid who got along with everyone no matter what friend group he belonged to. He just wanted to have a good time, go see live bands, and didn't expect anything from anyone. Signing himself out of school early, my dad was a hard worker, still is. At the bowling alley, my mother introduced herself to him, telling him she was 21. Okay, friends, I find it interesting that whenever she talks about Rod being young, she's like, I just imagine him totally chill, just wanted to go see live bands. But when she talks about Dee Dee being young and wanting to go see live bands, she was a groupie and there was no way she could have been a virgin and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah. And then we see that at the end, too. She always gives Rod a lot of grace that Dee Dee never gets. I mean, obviously, Dee Dee didn't get any grace since Gypsy did what we know she did to her friends. But at the end there, she says, at the bowling alley, my mother introduced herself to him, telling him she was 21. She makes a big deal about Dee Dee lowering her age from 23 to 21, but she never says what age Rod told Dee Dee he was, because he was at the bar drinking. So I assume Dee Dee would have assumed he was 21 and tried to lower her age to not be the older woman. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. If there's any evidence to the contrary, friends, let me know in the comments. You know, I'm always open to understanding if I've made a mistake in understanding or misremembered something. Okay, anyway, Gypsy says, like in one of those 80s movies where some geeky freshman chases after the senior homecoming queen, Dad's boy brain thought he'd scored with an older woman, one who had her own ride, a Ford Fiesta, and could legally buy him booze and be his designated driver. He just didn't know how much of an older woman she truly was. Mama was actually 23 years old. The question is, why would a woman in her 20s want an immature boy as a boyfriend? Knowing what I know now, I suspect she thought that she could easily manipulate or control him in a way that a man her age wouldn't allow. Or maybe her insecurity made her feel that a man her age wouldn't want her. She could have just thought Dad was hot. Those things can all be true at the same time. Friends, she never says what age Rod told Dee Dee he was. Not that I'm finding anyway. Again, if anyone knows where she has said that, let me know. Back to the book. So they started dating, mama driving dad to Biloxi to bar hop, going out to see hair bands in the NOLA club scene, frequenting the local dive bar hangout at the greenhouse. Mama was really into music. When she was younger, she used to follow bands around. She claimed she was in a relationship with Jack Russell, the lead singer of the 80s hair band Great White. I was recently told by a friend of Mama's that they were both outside a concert venue waiting for the band to come out of the tour bus. And my mother managed to get a picture taken with Jack, which she framed and hung on her bedroom wall. She told anyone who saw it that Jack had mailed the photo to her because they were in a relationship, which was completely false. Oh, friends. She acts like that's such a telling detail, but I don't know any teenage girls that didn't at some point when they were a teenager try and pretend to someone that they were in a relationship with someone famous, usually a rock star. It's so common. Okay, listen to this next paragraph, friends. Mama also claimed that she was a virgin before she met my dad. I'm not about to ask dad his opinion on this, but I know that being a groupie and a virgin cannot be true at the same time. Christy even made fun of Dee Dee for this on a live once. She said Dee Dee told her that she was a groupie and that she was following bands. And Christy said, I thought, oh, what, on your knees? And yeah, Dee Dee was young and single, even if she was being a groupie in the most literal sexual sense of the word. So what? She was an adult doing what she wanted, if that was the case. It's nowhere near the same as Gypsy being 18 and sneaking out of the house to meet a 50-year-old man, friends, as we know she confessed to in her prison emails. Okay, back to the book. According to stories I've heard, Mama had a thing for lead singers and wanted to be their girlfriend. Sometimes she sent flowers to herself and told people they were from various rock stars. With lies, she created lore. She was always telling stories. That was just Dee Dee. Again, friends, I feel like Gypsy's telling on herself some of these descriptions. Back to the book. Was kneading together lies to bake a tasty story a learned behavior from her childhood? There are plenty of secrets in the Petrie family that nobody talks about. I'm positive it's like that in most families. When you have a secret as big as the one that my mother kept about her own father, Claude Petrie, who could blame her? My mother was the baby of 6 children, and get this, of the 6, half were named after their father. Claude, Claude Jr., Claudia, and Claudine. Narcissist much? Dee Dee, as Mama was called, dreams of being a somebody. She often made it a point to remind me that she could have been that somebody if she hadn't given it all up to take care of me. By the time my mother was 12, she had gained a lot of weight. According to her, she blew up, and she tried to wrap her middle in cellophane to sweat off the fat. I can't help but think her eating disorders coincided with her gaining womanly body fat after getting her first period, and with trying to purge the secret of what happened when my grandfather insisted on joining her during her baths. During her 11th and 12th grade years, Mama lost close to 200 pounds. Apparently, my grandmother Emma body shamed Mama relentlessly, calling her fat. Mama began a very unhealthy diet and soon developed anorexia and bulimia. Her high school friend told me she remembers Mama eating only rice cakes for a whole year. Oh, that's sad. Momsy Emma, as I called her, used to say her husband Claude was a man whore, claiming he had a wandering eye. I don't know if Emma knew what Claude was doing to Dee Dee. Back then, who knows? When Mama was younger, Momsy used to keep her home from school all day, telling her she was sick when she really wasn't. My mother told me she used to drink vinegar to make her skin snow white so she'd be more beautiful, and I guess it worked. This paragraph has more to it, friends, but I had to burst in here to say it's really weird how she just glossed over that. We don't even know if that was true, but to just throw it out there in one sentence unexamined is very strange, don't y'all think? Or am I reaching? Anyway, she says, I guess it worked. In her senior year in 1986, Mama was South Lafourche High School's ROTC Queen. ROTC stands for Reserve Officers Training Course. I never knew this track is for students who want to go to college to train to become an Army officer. How Mama loved to talk about this momentous event. She made it seem that after that crowning, she had been entered into pageants all around the state, except that wasn't true. I have come to find out that she attended pageants out of the obligation of being the 1986 ROTC Queen. She had not been entered in any pageants after that. Oh, again, ooh, big bad Dee Dee. She exaggerated her beauty queen experience before her life pretty well ended. Pretty freaking harmless, I think, friends. What do y'all think? If that's even true. We don't know from Gypsy's word, but what Dee Dee didn't get entered into more pageants. Gypsy says, I feel sad for Mama now, for wanting me to believe that one pageant was so much more than what it was. I think that was the only time in her youth when she felt truly special and pretty. She would tell me the same stories of her glory days over and over again, how celebrities hit on her on Bourbon Street or how musicians put her name in their songs and in the liner notes of their albums. More needing. Was she trying to get my adoration, my attention? Was she trying to make me jealous? I heard about how skinny she got, how pretty she got, how people applauded her when she was a beauty queen. It almost seemed like she was trying to make me feel even smaller in my wheelchair with no teeth, malnourished, androgynous, with no attractiveness at all, most of the time dressed as a boy. I think she used to have it all until I came along. I put her on a pedestal. I'd see pictures and think, wow, that was my mama. No wonder Claude loved her most. What a creepy thing for her to say. No wonder Claude loved her most. Because she's alleging that Claude abused both her and Dee Dee. And she used that sentence to describe the abuse as love. No wonder Claude loved her most. It's very weird, friends. And something I've noticed, and Lil Frodo noted it too in some of their Reddit posts on the emails, and I've actually talked with them privately on Reddit messages about this. We both noticed it in Gypsy's emails to Kian, sometimes to Ryan, even one to that appears to be to Sebastian and other people, she will go from saying something extremely sexual to immediately talking about her dad. It's like she doesn't quite even realize that she's doing it. It's such a distinct pattern. Let me know what you think in the comments if I'm right or if I'm reaching. Anyway, back to the book. Gypsy said, no wonder Claude loved her most. Ugh. Gypsy's brain is so weird, friends. She says, maybe I didn't follow in Mama's footsteps as a beauty queen, but when it came to Claude, I would turn out to be his favorite just like my mom had been. I don't know when my mama's dreams had died, but by the time she met my father, she was drifting. She had tried. I remembered her saying, the rest of us kids were fuck-ups, so I tried to do my mom proud by joining ROTC and winning a beauty pageant. It's interesting that Gypsy preludes the accusations that she makes towards Claude by saying, I would turn out to be his favorite just like my mom had been. That's not usually how people describe an abuser in the family honing in on them. It's very weird. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm unaware that that is a more normal thing. Let me know in the comments, friends. She had never been in a serious relationship that I know of, had only completed 2 years of college, and wasn't in nursing school as she is intended. She blamed the lack of achievement on having me, but I think it's the other way around. She hadn't achieved much, so caring for a chronically sick kid became the excuse or even the justification. See, Dee Dee isn't a fuck up like the rest of those kids. Poor things got Gypsy. You know, friends, 2 years of college is not nothing. You know what I mean? I understand that it's not finishing and stuff, but 2 years of college is not nothing. A lot of people don't have that much education. I don't. I have 1 semester of community college. So it's just really weird how Gypsy's trying to act like Dee Dee achieved absolutely nothing. And I can't remember, since we're only in the second chapter, but in all that talk about being a groupie, Gypsy never mentioned the fact that her mom actually was in a rock music video. I can't remember if she mentions it later on in the book, but yeah, she talks about how those were all just lies and dreams. Well, she was in a video. We saw it. You know, she was in the crowd. They used the footage. I can imagine being in the video probably really made Dee Dee excited and happy, maybe blew her head up a little bit, you know, had her wanting to exaggerate a little and pretend maybe it was more than it was. Again, so harmless. I don't think it's cool to lie. I'm not one to condone casual lying, but this is young girl stuff. You know what I mean, friends? I'm a middle-aged millennial now. I've got the benefit of experience to not tolerate casual lying and feel firm and solid in the fact that I don't do it. But I can't say that about when I was in my teens and, 21 kind of thing. Some of us actually do grow. We don't just talk about it like, certain someone we all know. Okay, back to the book. My grandmother Sharon, my dad's mother, worked at the public library and one day noticed a book in the return bin that had Mama's name on the checkout card in the back pocket. The title was something along the lines of How to Get Pregnant Fast. Concerned, Sharon called her son to warn him. If you know any 17-year-old boys, I don't need to tell you her warning fell on deaf ears. Instead, Dad confronted Mama, who became enraged that Sharon breached the confidentiality rules of the library. Next thing you know, Mama was trying to get Sharon fired. I know Mama had a taste for vengeance because I often witnessed it, so it makes sense that she jumped to such a vindictive act. Again, there's a lot of judgment in her words there, and we know that Gypsy definitely has a taste for revenge. We've seen her express it publicly, and we've seen it privately in her emails, friends. Gypsy says, you'd think she would have cared about the risk that her boyfriend's mother could end up hating her. That's hilarious considering her emails with Ryan's mom and to other people about Ryan's family. Okay, Gypsy says, characteristically, my mother got very defensive and felt slighted by the smallest actions, even if they weren't done on purpose. She'd read into things, make assumptions about what people were thinking, take unrelated actions as personal affronts, and would shut them down in any way she could. Mama also ran away from situations and conflict a lot. Later in my life, I think she graduated from defensive to paranoid. Did she just shame Dee Dee for running away from situations and conflict, friends, whenever she had Dee Dee all the way murdered so that she could run away from the situation and not have to face the consequences of their fraud? Good Lord. Anyway, she says, this made it very difficult for her to have relationships, especially with her siblings. Her paranoia was partly why she isolated us from the world. Oh, I think a hurricane had a little bit to do with that. One of the biggest hurricanes and most devastating in American history. Little Hurricane Katrina. Good God, friends. Okay. Gypsy says, long story short, the pregnancy book worked because, well, here I am. In order to gather an understanding of my mother and my own birth story, I've had to endure some TMI moments with Dad and his wife of 30 years, Christy. The tale is as old as time. Rod wasn't in love with Dee Dee, but he was brought up with a sense of duty that told him he had to marry her. It was the right thing to do when you get a girl pregnant. They had sex 3 times in their entire relationship and didn't consummate the marriage. Dee Dee didn't fuss too much about that. Maybe she had gotten what she wanted out of Rod already. Because he was a minor, Dad needed his own mother's signature to consent to his marriage. The ceremony and reception were at the VFW in Golden Meadow, Louisiana, on December 27th, 1990. On the way there, Dad and one of his groomsmen got into a wreck and totaled Mama's Ford Fiesta. Wow, I'm sure Dee Dee was happy about that. Good Lord. Dad was arrested for driving without a license, and he had to use his phone call to ask Mama's parents, Claude and Emma, to bail him out so he could make it to the hall to marry their daughter. Got to break in here again, friends, to say it's interesting how Gypsy shows not much judgment at all in her tone to Rudd over any of this. She says, once they all arrived at the altar, Dad didn't have the rings. In the middle of the ceremony, my dad's best man, Terry Jr., literally ran out of the VFW and all the way back to Grandma Sharon's house to fetch the rings from the kitchen counter. After the wedding reception, Dad and Mama partied at the greenhouse where Dad was chatting up his high school friends and old girlfriends and did a shot with his best friend, Christy, who worked at the same local hospital as Mama. Christy had been invited to the wedding but declined, saying she had other plans, a lie Christy was caught in awkwardly as Mama ran into her at the greenhouse. Dad looked handsome in his all-white tux, which had become playfully disheveled, with his shirt untucked and his tie unknotted. His mission, get drunk as a skunk, which he did. Mission accomplished. She doesn't mention it, but there's been a lot of rumors from people out of that area that Rod and Christy actually made out at him and Dee Dee's wedding reception where he was all drunk as a skunk at that bar. Gypsy says, Mom and Dad's wedding night was spent in Claude and Emma's house in the upstairs bedroom where they planned to live for a while. At the age of 17, my dad was already working as a full-time fisherman, trawling for shrimp. He had signed himself out of high school as soon as he legally could to follow his own father's footsteps in the family trade. Trawling is a type of commercial fishing that involves a boat pulling a weighted fishing net behind it through the water on the seafloor to target certain fish and seafood species, including a Louisiana staple, shrimp. My dad worked on a shrimp boat with 20-foot nets that had mouths as large as Moby Dick's, swallowing up shrimp wherever they were hiding in lakes, rivers, causeways, and the bayou. Trawling is hard work, especially when emptying the shrimp from nets and putting them in ice and storing them. Dad would be gone for weeks at a time. Even today, his job as a boat captain requires him to work the boat for a month straight. At least once Mama had me, she'd have the help of her own Mama while Dad was gone. Being away from home so much made it convenient for Dad to play around behind Mama's back. Seeing other women without getting caught is a lot easier when you aren't expected home, and Dad went a little overboard, no pun intended, with his affairs. Ultimately, he got caught when a young girl around the same age as my dad came around looking for Mama's help. Or at least that's the story Mama told me. The girl wanted money from Mama and an abortion because Rod had gotten her pregnant. My mother, being Catholic, was not pro-choice and said she wouldn't aid this stranger in getting an abortion. But she did have extra diapers and formula of mine she'd give her to help. The other girl decided to have and keep the baby, and today I have a half-sister almost the same age as me, doesn't live too far away. She seems like a really sweet girl, raised by her mama and stepdad, whom she considers her father. She reached out to me once when I was in prison. She was gracious and kind to me, and I wish her only the very best and happiness. Sorry, it's hard not to digress in my storytelling, as the more I investigate, the more twists and turns in my colorful family unwind. With the other women out of the picture, Dad and Mama were still having a bit of a sex problem in that they weren't having any. They hadn't officially consummated their marriage, and with Dad away so much seeing other women, the last time they'd had sex was when I was conceived. My dad went back and forth on how to leave Mama, starting almost immediately after the wedding. Did y'all notice, friends, how she talked about Rod's affairs with zero judgment? Whereas there was so much judgment for Dee Dee wanting to be a groupie when she was unmarried, single, with no children. For almost 3 months, Rod called Christy asking for advice for a way out of the marriage. Over and over again, he said to her, I want to leave Dee Dee, but I don't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. Tell her how you feel, was Christy's answer. Rod even went to Christy's mom for help since she'd watched him grow up. Finally, on the morning of his 18th birthday, March 25th, 1991, my dad packed his things while Mama slept. What you think you're doing? She asked when the rustling awaked her, pulling the blankets off and sitting up. Dee Dee, I'm leaving you. I don't love you. This is wrong, and I did this for the wrong reasons. Without words, Mama popped up from her bed, ripped the framed marriage license off the wall, and threw it across the room. I don't think this is when my mother's man-hating began. I think she always hated them. Men might be nice to look at, she'd say, but they'll betray you in a heartbeat. Better to just stay away from them all. So I did, until I didn't. Once again, okay, so Gypsy says she thinks Dee Dee always hated men. She can't even give her the grace if she believes, as she appears to. Gypsy appears to believe that Claude abused Dee Dee the same way Gypsy accused her of. She can't even give Dee Dee the grace to assume that that would be when she started hating men. Gypsy's obvious bias here is so crazy. Like, you'd think after murdering the woman, that she would try to be a little less unbiased when describing all this bad behavior from Rod, and Dee Dee sounded kind of like a saint in the situation. I'm not saying she was a saint. She definitely was not, in my opinion. My opinion might turn out to be wrong, and that'll be okay. I'll apologize. But I don't believe that Dee Dee was a saint. But in this situation, in this description, Gypsy is making her sound like one while being so over judgmental on her on things like wanting to be with rock stars when she was young and single. Good God, friends. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and we will go out with a palate cleanser. Hope everyone's having a good day.